On a dark night in Shinjuku, some thugs are mercilessly beating someone up in an empty alley. Sent flying after a brutal hit, our MC faceplants hard onto the ground. The punks immediately burst out laughing, saying a punching bag would put up a better fight. Racked with pain and spitting blood, Tendo Megami grumbles about his rotten luck. Totally frustrated, the kid regrets getting mixed up with this kind of trash. Just then, one of the bullies suddenly hesitates and asks the group if maybe they should stop. Confused by his buddy's sudden change of heart, the other one reminds him that the kid's younger brother is someone dangerous. But unexpectedly, the sound of steady footsteps echoes through the alley, stopping the beatdown in its tracks. Emerging from the darkness, an imposing man in a white overcoat walks toward the commotion. With an eye patch and an icy expression, the mysterious figure freezes everyone on the spot with his presence alone. Panic instantly sets in as the guys recognize the absolute genius and strongest man in Japan. Gunning down the trash with his glare, Ryuji just coldly orders them to get out of his way. Terrified by the killer pressure, the punks book it, running for their lives. Completely terrified, the gang tears past our fallen MC and bolts from the scene. Right after they scatter, the prodigy calmly keeps walking as if nothing happened. Ignoring his injured brother's existence, the genius walks right by without offering any help. Surprised by the cold attitude, our MC struggles to lift his head and calls out to his younger brother. Barely turning his head, Ryuji mercilessly fires back that his older brother is pathetic. And just like that, the national hero turns his back and walks away, leaving the injured guy on the dirty ground. Whispering on the street, gossips comment that the prodigy really hates his failure of a brother. Treated like the family's black sheep, the kid hangs his head, feeling the weight of the social shaming. Suddenly, the crowd gasps in surprise, noticing who's walking closely behind the hero. Behind the strongest man, an incredibly elegant and armed woman draws everyone's eyes. Giving the fallen guy one last glance out of the corner of her eye, the mysterious warrior continues on her way in silence. Soon, people start comparing the brutal power gap between the twins, hurting the young man's feelings. Lost in his own dark thoughts, our poor MC wonders when their relationship went sour. His memory quickly answers, recalling the exact day everything changed forever. During their sunny childhood, the two would run happily through the fields, thinking they were invincible. Back in those carefree days, little Tendo wore a huge grin, fearless of absolutely anything. But all that blind, childish confidence was about to be shattered in the worst way possible. 5 years ago, the sky suddenly went dark, and a massive labyrinth portal swallowed the city. Desperate amidst the chaos and destruction, the kid saw his perfect reality get torn to shreds. With the ground cracking beneath his feet, little Ryuji tried to run from the imminent danger. Paralyzed by extreme fear, our MC completely froze in front of the deadly chasm opening up. Then the ground gave way, sending the entire family plummeting into the portal's endless darkness. Appearing like a real-life nightmare, the monstrous anomaly devoured everything in its path. Left all alone in the pitch black, the boy survived while losing his entire family. Shortly after the tragedy, the army cordoned off the area around the giant portal that changed the world. Back in the cold, silent safety of the city hospital, the atmosphere was one of mourning and absolute shock. Wrapped in a blanket in the waiting room, the survivor tried to process the bizarre trauma. On the TV news, it becomes clear that the only one rescued alive from the dimensional inferno was the younger brother. Seeing his brother on screen surrounded by paramedics, the weight of his own powerlessness crushes the young man's soul. Correcting himself a moment later, the young man admits the harsh truth that's wrecking his mind. During the fall, his brother was begging for help while he could only stand there, crying in terror. Even as his little brother was being sucked into the darkness, the coward was unable to reach out a hand to help. After surviving the insane trauma, the younger brother awakened abilities beyond human comprehension. From that dark day forward, the brothers' destinies were torn in completely opposite directions. Plastered across every big screen, Ryuji became the youngest conqueror and the nation's greatest legend. Unable to find any success in life, the loser walks with his head down, accepting his streak of bad luck. On the city streets, people whisper nasty things, pointing to the boy as the hero's genetic flaw. Hurt by the venomous gossip, the kid's eyes completely lose any spark of hope. With a sad smile, he agrees that the humiliating nickname fits him perfectly. In front of the bright screen, our MC cements his place as the one and only incompetent stain on his brother's history. Back to the harsh reality of the dark alley in the present, Tendo Megami suffers the consequences of his own weakness. Immediately, the pain from the punches comes roaring back, punishing his already battered body. Lying on the cold asphalt, bloody coughs prove the miserable state of the beaten young man. In his head, it's obvious the country's strongest hero still holds a deadly grudge from that night of cowardice. With no time to dwell on the past, a surprise kick mercilessly slams into his back. Treated like recyclable trash, the poor guy wonders what someone so useless could possibly do to change things. Overcome by absurd frustration, his bloody fist clenches tight with hatred for still being a doormat. Suddenly, the attackers stop the beating, completely spooked by a bizarre change in the sky. Feeling the atmosphere suddenly turn heavy, our MC lifts his eyes with great difficulty. Through his dilated pupils, a sinister purple glow reveals the terror taking over his face. Right above the bullies' heads, a massive sphere of dark energy distorts all of local reality. With a deafening boom, rays of destructive power wipe the punks off the map, sending them flying. Seeing the bubbling anomaly, the boy connects the dots and realizes a labyrinth just spawned right there. Breaking through the dimensional barrier, a liquid drop of pure energy falls from the sky and gently touches the ground. Immediately after, a crack of darkness snakes across the asphalt, heading straight for the victim. With zero chance to escape, the dark tentacles instantly swallow the brutalized young man's body. As the darkness takes over, holographic system panels appear out of nowhere, scanning and healing his body. Lit by an insane blue technological aura, our little MC's eyes go wide, unable to comprehend the madness. The magical system quickly finishes its operation, announcing the perfect registration of a new Conqueror. Giant neon letters flash directly in the guy's vision, officially welcoming him to the deadly labyrinth. In the blink of an eye, a spiral black hole of pure energy forcefully pulls the kid into another dimension. Face planting on a stone dungeon floor, the unlikely hero groans as his new journey finally begins. Waking up confused on the stone floor, our boy tries to process what just happened. He quickly gets up, still a bit dazed from the forced dimensional transport. Faced with a colossal hallway, the dark scenery screams that this is a dangerous dungeon. Panic hits hard as our MC confirms he's fallen right into the labyrinth's trap. Suddenly, a sharp, mechanical beep sounds right next to his left ear. Startled by the sudden noise, the young man touches his own face, trying to find the source. Before his eyes, a futuristic blue interface appears, floating and projected in the air. Focused on the bright holographic screen, the system displays a grim clock showing 69 years of life. Completely lost by this information, Tendo has no idea what that means. Nearby, the punks who beat him up are also yelling in confusion, seeing the same numbers. To make the nightmare worse, the poor guy notices his attackers ended up in the same heck hole. Just then, the magic lens blinks again, locking its sights right on the gang leader. Above the arrogant bully's head, the display shows a life expectancy of exactly 83 years. Completely shocked by the technology, the kid questions what kind of absurd magic this is. But before he can get any logical answer, something at the end of the hall catches his attention. Lined up perfectly in the corridor, strange, dark metal pedestals emit a faint glow. Curious about the weird objects, our hero approaches with extreme caution. With silent steps, his intuition screams that this might be his only chance to survive. As he gets closer to the alien-like altar, surprise takes over his scraped-up face. Embedded in one of the heavy stands, an imposing, high-tech sword awaits a master. Facing the imminent threat of the labyrinth, he instantly deduces the weapons are for self-defense. Hesitantly reaching out his hand, our MC tries to grab the handle of the mysterious equipment. Right behind him in the shadows, the leader of the bullies spots the treasure and flashes a greedy smile. With his fingertips on the cold metal, the blade seems to vibrate and pulse with pure energy. Brutally shoved aside, Tendo is called trash by the pushy punk. Without asking and with brute force, the big guy announces he's taking the weapon for himself. Thrown onto his butt on the hard floor, our little MC lets out a groan, feeling the wounds from the beating. Suddenly, the aggressor freezes in place, hearing a robotic voice echo from nowhere. Seeing the guy talking to himself like a crazy person, our boy finds the bizarre reaction strange. Through the virtual interface, the system invades Tendo's mind, telling him about the vibration sword. Thanks to the audio explanation, a disturbing detail about the weapon makes the young man's blood run cold. According to the machine's direct warning, wielding the epic blade costs the low price of 30 years of lifespan. Ignoring the fatal warnings, the thug tells the voice to shut up and brutally draws the greatsword. Immediately, the display's alarm starts beeping desperately in the protagonist's ear. Through the special lens, the HUD scans the big thug's body in real time. In a terrifying blink of an eye, the guy's 83-year quota plummets to a mere 53. Shocked by the grim toll, the kid discovers that the vital numbers are literal and dangerous. Holding the vibrating relic, the target laughs loudly, swearing he's become totally invincible. Blinded by his inflated ego, the little villain even dares to mock the greatest conqueror in Japan. But right in the middle of his arrogant laugh, something very fast cuts through the darkness above them. Caught completely by surprise, the coward's victorious expression melts in an instant. In a flash of red, the aggressor's head simply explodes into dozens of pieces. Painting the gray wall crimson, the headless body gushes fluid like a bizarre fountain. Utterly terrified, Tendo's pupils shrink as he watches the raw departure right in front of him. Dropping from the ceiling with animalistic force, the creature responsible for the kill lands, crushing the floor. With the killer finally revealed, the gang's lackeys fall into total despair. Faced with the alien bone armor and a glowing ruby eye, the danger level is terrifying. Trembling with pure terror, the poor guy instinctively retreats, putting up his guard in a panic. Right behind the silver aberration, the bully's decapitated remains undergo a disgusting mutation. Stunned by the bizarre sight, our MC watches the entire corpse turn to gray dust. The interface quickly starts beeping again, officially confirming that target's expiration. On the little floating screen, the punk's life counter mercilessly hits 0. Overcome by imminent despair, the protagonist yells for everyone to run as fast as they can. At that, the beast flexes its muscles and sharpens its metallic claws for the next hunt. In a brutal supersonic leap, the beast flies like a guided missile toward the useless kid. Caught off guard by the absurd agility, he knows this is the end of the line. Right in the victim's face, the alien's mechanical eye glows, thirsty for more carnage. Driven purely by the instinct to not perish, the young man runs and grabs another available weapon from a pillar. Yanking out the greatsword with all his might, he braces himself to tank the approaching deadly charge. The system automatically collects its cursed price, burning 30 years and leaving the kid with only 39. Desperate and with the heavy weapon in hand, our little MC flees the fight, lamenting his stolen years. Annoyed with the labyrinth's rules, he yells for having drawn the sword on pure survival instinct. But luck is never on his side, and his escape route is blocked by a wall of dark bricks. With an emergency skid on the floor, the boy realizes he's run straight into a dead end. Fast as a killer rocket, the gleaming monster cuts through the air, hot on its prey's heels. Gripping the high-tech steel tightly, Tendo tries to dig up courage from the depths of his soul to fight. Breaking out in a cold sweat from the killer pressure, he seriously doubts his own ability to win. Tossing his fears to the wind in a fit of rage, the young man plants his feet and charges forward. In a violent swing that cuts through the air, the boy bets everything on slicing the enemy vertically. However, the creature proves to be insane, fluidly and humiliatingly dodging the superpowerful blade. Utterly dumbfounded by his mistake, our MC breaks into a cold sweat seeing his entire guard exposed and vulnerable. Hovering in the air like the lethal being it is, the beast positions itself perfectly to shred its slow prey. In a clean and merciless counterattack, the giant claw descends, slicing through the young man's clothes and flesh. Screaming in absurd pain, our boy feels his chest burn in excruciating agony. Thrown brutally to the ground, the impact knocks the air out of his lungs as the worst happens. Thrown onto the blood-stained asphalt, our boy groans in pain, feeling the end draw near. With his face contorted in agony, the brutal reality of the blow crushes his hope for good. With red liquid dripping through his fingers, he curses his own weakness under his breath in a rage. Close to the absolute end, the kid's mind wonders if he's just going to give up again without a fight. Suddenly, a blinding flash cuts through the hallway's darkness, saving the guy at the last millisecond. Sparks fly everywhere as a high-tech blade forcibly blocks the monster's lethal claw. Appearing like a true legend, Ryuji faces the beast head-on with his eye patch and killer aura. His eyes widening in complete shock, the older brother can hardly believe who just intervened. Without losing his arrogant pose, the genius scoffs that the loser is being far too generous with his own life. With his back to the wounded victim, the national hero criticizes the coward for taking a beating for nothing, even while holding a sword. Still on the dirty floor trying to think, our MC stammers his younger brother's name, completely paralyzed. Gripping the weapon's handle tightly, the humiliation from the words burns strongly in his pride-wounded chest. Cold and merciless, the platinum-haired hero tells the useless guy to find a hole to perish in if he has no will to live. Biting his lip in pure frustration, Tendo lets out an irritated click at the extremely humiliating scolding. Starting to walk toward the danger, the prodigy finishes his thought, drawing his own weapon. As he raises his sword, crackling with lethal electricity, the younger brother states that to survive, you must fight to the end. Emitting an absurdly enviable magical pressure, he coldly orders the guy to stay safe behind him. With the firm promise to get the failure out of there in one piece, the warrior's unshakable stance sends shivers down his spine. Confused by the overprotective attitude, our little MC doesn't understand why the hero would go so far to save him. At that very moment, a traumatic memory invades his mind, bringing his own cowardly screams from the past to the surface. Tormented by the scene where he abandoned his crying little brother to the monsters, the weight of guilt comes rushing back. Snapping back to reality with a huge jolt, the young man breathes heavily, trying to shove the trauma back into the darkness. Ignoring the heavy tension in the air, the platinum-haired hero states that their family grudges don't matter in this minefield. Charging the threat with a sonic boom, the prodigy declares that risking his life for the people is his only law. With a flawless body spin, Ryuji shows in practice what it means to carry the weight of being the country's best conqueror. Completely hypnotized by the violent work of art, the boy realizes he will never be able to erase that image. With a sweaty face and his jaw on the floor, the feeling of terror is purified by a blind and overwhelming admiration. Pushed to the corner of the deadly scene, the kid simply forgets his own pain as he absorbs every detail of the clash. Gliding through the air like a true, untouchable god of war, the hero slices the wind, engraving his strength into the spectator's soul. Executing the final attack with absolute perfection, the furious blade rips through the enemy's armor, turning the beast into space junk. Launching neon sparks throughout the dark chamber, the lethal trajectory of the slashes frames the swift and crushing victory. Reflecting an abundance of magical energy with each impact, the silhouette in combat undoubtedly belongs to a savior titan. As he watches the prodigy single-handedly dominate the battlefield, a tiny seed of ambition sprouts in the useless one's chest. Inspired by his younger brother's absurd strength, the failure finally feels his blood boil to reach the top on his own. Standing majestically after clearing the trash, the warrior's white overcoat billows, conveying glory and pure respect. Shifting focus to the planet's messed-up history, the whole global mess began 38 years ago with Labyrinth Zero. Floating silently like giant alien eggs over the metropolises, these rifts crushed any scientific concept. Bringing brutal chaos across the world map, the dimensional anomalies sprouted from the Statue of Liberty to Christ the Redeemer. Faced with despair tearing through the nation's defenses, scientists killed themselves researching the exact origin of this calamity. Surrounding the rift's perimeters with a heavy army, researchers figured out only 3 sacred and unbreakable rules. As the first merciless law, any volunteer who steps inside the zone can only guarantee a way out by taking down the guardian in the hole's depths. To make the situation completely worse, ignoring the egg's existence will never be a viable solution for the fragile human race. For the simple, bloody fact that the critters generated inside invariably overflow, spreading carnage across the earth. Finally, the third key discovery confirmed that normal weapons are useless, making it mandatory to use armaments dropped in the dungeons. As the heroic conclusion to all this, the suicidal crazies who bet their lives by jumping in became the elite known as Conquerors. With the entire room now properly cleansed of the threat, the group of survivors huddles together, taking deep breaths. To break the tense mood that lingered, our MC opens his mouth, reciting everything he remembered about the Rifts of Doom. Turning his head with a sharp glance, the officer praises the textbook knowledge but adds that the main detail is missing. In a painful reality check lesson, Ryuji decrees that the title of Conqueror is more of a biological sentence than a job. Without beating around the bush, the hero points out the sore spot, informing Tendo and the rest of the trash squad that they've already been initiated by the system. With calm, heavy steps on the stone pavement, the warrior reveals that the very air of the dungeon reprograms the victim's biology. With a cynical, provocative smirk, he tests if the newbie didn't feel a bizarre change boiling in his veins just seconds ago. Lost in his own racing thoughts, a stroke of genius hits the kid, connecting all the clues dropped there. From the crystal-clear memory of the blue healing lights glowing over his wounds, the video game magic turns into a real and immediate danger. Quickly connecting the dots in his head, the young man's reasoning kicks in, focusing on that infernal floating interface for the swords. Back to the blasted virtual holographic panel, the recruit checks his stat sheet, trembling before the magic numbers. Pointing to the absurd data with a shaky finger, he watches the count plummet to a dangerously low 37 years. In a sudden halt of his heroic walk, the stronger brother's posture becomes tense, waiting for the older one's reality to finally sink in. In a state of acute panic, the poor guy freaks out seeing his balance drop another 2 digits from thin air without even using the equipment. Solving the riddle and shattering the group's last bit of innocence, the younger brother coldly makes it official that those numbers are each person's life fuel. Getting straight to the point, the prodigy explains that the body literally consumes a person's lifespan to auto-heal fatal damage. Looking at his own leg, destroyed by the gang's beating moments before, our little MC notices the limb is completely restored and unharmed. Thanks to the recent memory of having his organs spilled by the monstrous beast's claws, the cruel math adds up perfectly. Touching his tattered clothes with his hands, he's shocked to see the lethal hole in his chest closed before he could even blink. Enchanted by the illusory marvel of instant regeneration, his house of cards collapses when his savior lays out the raw, naked truth. With a fixed gaze that pierces Tendo's soul, the final sentence is that letting your life's bank account hit zero is absolute game over. Paralyzed with fear in the face of the truth, a chill runs down the kid's spine as he realizes how close he came to being a goner. Regarding the tragic fate of every labyrinth warrior, Ryuji decrees that no one there has the luxury of passing away peacefully of old age. Focusing on the dark ashes scattered on the floor, what was left of the sliced-in-half mobster, the absurd price of fatal damage becomes indisputable. With terror weighing in his throat as he swallows hard, Tendo tries to steady his wobbly legs, understanding the colossal level of danger in that zone. Suddenly, the eye patchwearer's innate killer instinct detects a very dangerous change in the ceiling, plunged in shadows. Drawing his weapon in a violent flash, the officer adopts a kill stance, warning that the calm of the place has gone down the drain. Raining down from the false ceiling like thirsty demons, several white anomalies fall at high speed, closing in for the kill. Faced with the brutal ambush that threatens to swallow everyone, the useless one despairs, screaming for his genius brother's protection. In a marvelous acrobatic leap, humanity's ace skips the chatter, shredding the flying swarm in a masterpiece of destruction. Startled by the sudden attack from above, the younger brother reacts in the blink of an eye. In a spectacular counterattack, a blast of blue energy sweeps the false ceiling, erasing the threat. Stunned by the absurd reaction speed, our MC can barely process what he just saw. Surrounded by the hot carcasses of monsters, the boy realizes the entire room was cleared in a fraction of a second. Completely unfazed after the double kill, the hero simply rests his sword as if nothing had happened. Explaining the golden rule of the place, the platinum-haired hero says that destroying the enemy's core is the only way to farm lifetime. Curious about the valuable survival tip, the kid stares at the glowing sphere that fell near his brother's feet. Perfectly split in half by the lethal blow, the red core showcases the warrior's monstrous precision. Smiling from pure nervousness and an inferiority complex, Tendo doubts he'll ever have that same fatal skill. Suddenly, the magic holographic display beeps loudly, revealing the legendary Conqueror's life stats. Boasting an unbelievable 189 years of clean balance, the surreal number shocks the recruit's vision. Awestruck by the guy's temporal wealth, the useless one concludes that the number of creatures disemboweled here is insane. Looking down with a jolt of reality, it sinks in just how hellish a weight his little brother carries fighting alone. Without turning to comfort his family, the prodigy's cold posture bears the burden of protecting the entire nation on his back. In a short and blunt outburst, the officer reminds them that the human race would be toast in an instant if the elite didn't drown themselves in blood. Agreeing in silence with his head bowed, the loser swallows the hard truth about the fragility of this cruel world. Resuming his tactical march without losing focus, Ryuji's heavy boots echo authoritatively through the dark stone corridor. Hurrying down the dungeon stairs, the group of scared civilians follows their escort, praying for a miracle. Just around the next bend, the military leader announces with relief that the blessed exit is finally close. Entering a huge hall, the welcoming glow of a purple portal illuminates the final stretch, guaranteeing their salvation. Shimmering with waves of stabilized magical energy, the gigantic rift promises a direct passage to the civilized surface. Grinning from ear to ear with a racing heart, our little MC celebrates the golden opportunity to get out of the nightmare in one piece. Suddenly spoiling the victorious mood, the younger brother stretches out his arm, startlingly stopping everyone's movement. With an automatic red alert warning sound, the click of the safety being released reveals the platinum-haired hero drawing his sword, ready to strike. From the cold shadows flanking the portal steps, the silhouette of someone mysterious emerges, advancing slowly. Immediately focused and ready to slice even the wind, the hero locks on, pointing the tip of his weapon at the unidentified threat. Walking calmly out of the darkness, the metallic sound of the person's armor reveals a very well-trained combat stance. Bringing instant relief to the group's hearts, the beautiful and deadly captain with purple hair introduces herself as an ally. Saluting with an elegant gesture, the brave military subordinate confirms her identity to her superior. Lowering his guard with a polished move, the chief relaxes his posture, bringing a bit of fresh air back into the tense hall. Taking a few more short steps to reveal her full appearance, the girl officially joins the tattered squad. Wearing the coveted form-fitting uniform and carrying her own deadly sword, Officer Yui Mizusaki reeks of pure danger and lethality. Maintaining the stuffy formality of the Corps, she reports being extremely pleased to find her partner in one piece. Immediately reporting the status of the emergency mission, the soldier says she escorted several civilians along the route, but pauses with a grim face. Quickly understanding the woman's body language, the captain absorbs the grim certainty that many did not survive the monster-filled inferno. Caught completely off guard by the assassin's voice and style, the boy snaps out of his trance, recognizing her delicate face. Stammering like an idiot while pointing at her, the kid blurts out in surprise that he saw her attached to the hero's hip earlier today. With his curiosity speaking infinitely louder than his fear, Tendo bluntly asks if she's the superhuman's secret girlfriend. Completely shattering the chump's romantic daydream, Ryuji says he has much better taste and that his colleague is nothing more than useful labor. Her expression turning deeply offended, the beautiful shield maiden snaps back, questioning what the problem is with her appearance. Changing the subject to avoid a stupid fight during work hours, Yui stares at the injured failure and demands his ID. Sighing with agony and extreme embarrassment, the platinum-haired genius spits out the truth that this walking bad luck charm is family. Forcing a weak smile to build a connection, our protagonist extends a hand in a very shy greeting. Staring into the boy's soul with absolute disgust, the warrior stomps on any chance of friendship, calling his face disgusting. Ignoring the unwanted relative's brutal depression, the military chief questions the body count along the route, confirming the path is clear. Reflecting on the almost peaceful calm of the corridor, the platinum-haired hero's beastly instincts smell a giant, hidden fatal trap. Without hesitating in his strategic planning, the officer dryly orders his subordinate to herd the civilians through the glowing hole without looking back. Determined to investigate and gut the problem at its root, he marches off alone, turning his back and disappearing into a parallel corridor. Worried sick about his wonder brother's suicidal sanity, Tendo cranes his neck, calling the legend by his given name. Swallowed in the blink of an eye by the oppressive gloom, the majestic coat dives into the labyrinth's mystery, hunting for fresh carnage. Laughing nervously at his own incompetence in being grateful, the unlucky guy realizes he owed at least a proper thank you today. Assuming the position of control and rescue, Officer Yui firmly directs the human cattle to cross the portal's threshold quickly. Demanding an orderly single-file line at the mouth of the miraculous escape route, the woman tries to contain the widespread panic that keeps flaring up. Suddenly sweeping the area with her tactical magic eye, the captain notices a sinister anomaly tearing through the dungeon's upper structure. Yelling at the stupid recruit spacing out at the epicenter of the damage, she sounds the alarm, telling Tendo to move his blasted injured legs. In an invisible, cowardly strike without any system warning, a sharp stake of pure darkness tumbles down, piercing the stone ceiling like cardboard. Trembling to her bones in absolute panic, Yui's bright pupils shrink with fear at the destructive caliber coming from above. Moved by an irrational killer instinct to survive at all costs, the bodyguard launches off the asphalt, drawing her high-tech blade. Tearing through even the laws of gravity in the process, a massive monster dripping with cursed blood reveals itself, stomping the floor until it cracks in half. Momentarily paralyzed by the bizarre supersonic impact, the elite soldier's pupils widen. Defending against the absurd hammer blow with the pure skill of her own blade, the warrior feels her arms grind from the brutality of the physical assault. Sliding to a stop as the friction creates a waterfall of neon sparks on the floor, she ends up right in front of our terrified protagonist's nose. Groaning from the joint pain caused by the heavy punch from the darkness, the woman can't believe the caliber of force contained in that obscene blow. Retrieving the deformed greatsword floating in the air with elastic dark fluids, the aberration buys time, proving it wields a foul energy. Flushing the very laws of physics down the glitched dimension's drain, the chief architect of that slaughter lands, flaunting its heavy Death Knight armor. Sporting the abyss in a cybernetic visor and a chaotic twisted horn, the villain pours liquid despair, drowning everyone around in the blink of an eye. Landing majestically, crushing bones with its disgusting foot, the boss charges its attack, activating the energy in its weapon without leaving room to breathe. Suffering from the insane frontal shockwave without any shield to soften it, Tendo takes the blow to the face and is sent flying like a raw chicken. Bursting eardrums and kicking up clouds of dirt in a messy blast of blind energy, the massive explosion buries the escape route in blurry chaos. Flying spread-eagled to the sound of breaking stones in a fatal, bloody ballet, the young man collides, absorbing severe damage as he's thrown into a ditch. Rolling through the dirt with his fragmented mind struggling to think, he blinks his dust-filled eyes, having no idea where the alien meteor landed. Noticing his vision gradually clearing amidst the newly created smoky disaster, the terror finally gains weight as he sees Yui's figure collapsed and motionless. Closing the nightmare's circle just when the portal's scent pointed to certain salvation at the end of the tunnel, Tendo embraces fear again with his nerves shattered. Spreading that warm, metallic liquid that precedes unwarned tragedy, jets of an ally's blood spray across the blind kid's stunned face. Appearing like a colossal phantom at the boy's back by surprise, the sadistic boss raises its soaked blade, sentencing the useless coward to his end. Covering the destroyed left side of his face, our boy tries to stop the blood running through his limp fingers. Surprised and terrified, the throbbing pain confirms that half his face was turned to mincemeat when the big monster threw him. Screaming with an infernal agony that cuts his vocal cords, his body rejects the shock while his vision fails badly. Activating on its own in fatal emergency mode, the holographic interface warns that repairing his skull will burn through the rest of his lifespan. Above the settling dust in the makeshift arena, the armored demon spins its heavy blade, ready for the finishing blow. Igniting with pure violet fury, the creature's weapon hums, tearing through the structure of the heavy air around it. In a cowardly descent like a demonic guillotine, the enormous sword falls heavily, aiming straight for the defenseless victim's skull. Saved by the bell in an almost invisible blink, a blue blur cuts across the scene, intercepting the death sentence. Blocking the evil blow with his sheer mechanical arm, the prodigy appears between the enemy blade and the useless one's battered body. Fixing his glowing eyes directly on the threat, the younger brother locks his sword, planting his feet on the cracked ground to withstand the absurd weight. Shocked to his core and swallowing blood, the kid realizes the nation's savior returned to the ring just to cover his back again. In a clear demonstration of pure recklessness, the monster applies even more brute force, crushing the hero's knee against the stone. Unable to withstand the caliber of that unbalanced assault, one of Ryuji's arms can't hold and his armor shatters, giving in to the absurd pressure. In a clean and merciless cut filled with pain and silent despair, the platinum-haired officer's forearm is torn off, flying through the stained air. Gushing a bizarre red fountain in all directions, the warrior's amputated piece bounces pathetically on the floor along with the broken sword. In pure shock that even stops his breathing, the one-eyed hero sees his best defense turn to dust in a millisecond of delay. Utterly perplexed by the attacker's level of strength, he doesn't understand how the armored beast destroyed a high-level weapon so quickly. Staring into the void as his mind pieces together the creature's stats, humanity's legend deduces he's run into a plague never catalogued before. Thrown there like damaged luggage in the middle of the rift, the terrified MC understands that the tide of the fight has turned completely toward disaster. Closing the bloody wound with a gaze colder than before, the veteran takes a deep breath, accepting the damage to his own flesh. Looking at the cracked floor at the end of the hall, stained by his own failure, the weight of his mistake almost cost him too much. Accepting the bill without complaint, the platinum-haired genius recognizes that calculating with his own brother's life at risk led to the suicidal stumble. Tossing aside all pride and admitting the raw necessity of the situation, he says he'd hate to burn his life expectancy in this cramped sty. Bathed in pure blue electricity and fury ignited to the limit, a magical aura takes over the environment, announcing that the warm-up is over. Yelling from the floor in deep despair, Tendo points terrified at the gushing stump, crying over the savior's physical loss. With the sharp smile of a focused psychopath, the officer scoffs that severed limbs are just attacks collected and refunded by the labyrinth. Clenching his jaw at the crazy, confident response, the wounded boy feels the surreal disparity between his mind and the fighters. Before the freely blinking numbers that charge without mercy, the screen deducts an absurd 30 years, burned to restore the piece torn from the bone. Watching the bill from 189 take a ferocious dive, belly flopping to 156, the machine proves the risks are deadly. Completely paralyzed, questioning the other's sanity, the older brother indignantly asks how the heck he plans to face this nightmare by slowly offing himself. With not a shred of time to argue with a coward, Ryuji grits his teeth, announcing he will end this dance with a single fatal snap of his fingers. Igniting the dormant sinister magic, the cursed red eyeball glows, activating a trick hidden in the corporation's shadows. Tearing through time with raw, clean speed, the initial charge is a blur, cutting through space like a suicidal meteor, ignoring the limits of weight. Announcing the ultimate activation by voice command from his own neural interface, the modified eye locks on, ready for the rehearsed comeback play. Meeting the offensive head-on, the infernal boss tries to swing its armored horn to mercilessly impale the insane advance of that bold, platinum-haired insect. Suspended in the air and blinded by the suicidal maneuver of the tiny human prey coming from below the waist, the giant aberration loses its temporal advantage right there. Canceling the technique mid-strike to save precious blood battery, the pupil deactivates the magical effect, sealing the dirty plan with fine precision. In a flawless and accurate flying combo, the newly generated sword buries itself, tearing through the tough stone-like neck, spreading projectile plasma on visual impact. Shoving the saber in with everything he's got, giving the enemy no room to breathe through the newly created pain, the clash of blinding sparks cements his momentary dominance. Eyes widening at the bizarre tactile feedback transmitted to the hilt of his own too-sharp, glowing blue greatsword, confusion quickly returns. Skidding back with utmost caution, the captain slides, using the sole of his boot on the floor to escape the wave of automatic counterattack programmed by the wounded armored beast. Shaking the asphalt as it lands heavily after the violent slice from a tenth of a second before, with no time to retaliate for guaranteed mortal damage, the big monster doesn't fall. Fixing his gaze on that scarlet ruby core, faintly exposed between the ridge plates now cut in the machine's bizarre purple neck, the target is set. Grumbling with hatred at the surreal resistance of the thick enemy carapace armor, the master admits, sweating, that this thing won't break on the first hit. Accepting the rules of the game and confirming the anomaly is way beyond a common dungeon, the warrior smiles, confirming this unfortunate soul is 10 floors above expectations. Turning its neck with a grim, soul-chilling mechanical click, the purple titan changes its priority and gives up on playing fair with the agile ant. Launching a huge, materialized shard of darkness high into the air, the bizarre projectile crosses the entire hall straight for the rotten corner where the weak one was agonizing in hiding. Perceiving the cowardly move a millisecond too late, the officer bites his lip in frustration, swallowing heavy curses about the numerical disadvantage. Caught with his guard down watching the black missile coming to seal his grave in a hole in the ugly, dark, grimy wall, the kid cries, frozen with no strength left. Activating the magic trick for a second time at the sheer physical limit of the imminent panic spreading through the cold air of the conflict zone, the rush saves the blind creature. On the verge of having his skull pierced and his gray matter leaking onto the pavement, the arrow of pure evil touches the tip of the scraped nose of the victim, who had already accepted his deserved dirty end in there. Kicking time itself in the face of the merciless, brain-shattering blow, the hero flies in, pushing his quarry to the ground, saving him again. The two of them tumble down in an unglamorous heap, rolling across the rocky, cut-up asphalt that stinks of dust from the long, tense, drawn-out battle with no end in sight. In this bizarre circus arena suddenly set up in a closed corridor, isolated from urgent medical help, right near the dimensional magic door to salvation that was almost guaranteed, a false success now thrown down the drain. Planting his feet back down, raising his blue guard to shield his rear and defend his kin from the inevitable, imminent beating, his posture returns to place. Deactivating the spell that drains sanity along with energy and closing that terrifying ruby orb, the legend takes a step forward, shouldering the pains of the heavy, infernal field. Annoyed by the repeated tricks stealing its cheap targets, the purple threat dives in, starting a violent, free-fall melee clash. Grinding the floor beneath it, creating deep craters with the sheer gravitational force of its aggressive alien stomp, meant to break even the toughest spine that stayed within its deadly contact radius. The pressure was real, extreme, dense, and crushing to cowardly lungs, bursting eardrums with the raw sound generated in the dark, sweat-drenched screen. Blocking the second direct hit in a raw clash of sparking blades, not giving an inch against the deadly shove forced down his throat, Ryuji faces the beast, laughing at its desperation to off the defenseless, wounded, falling bird. Taunting even the patience the thing doesn't have, the soldier screams that he is the real primary threat, not the burden dying on the sidelines. Swallowed by a typhoon of absurd slashes creating a dome of. Completely lost in the middle of the storm of blows, the useless one groans on the floor, not knowing where the black, killer disaster came from or where it went. Bleeding from his nose and rubbing what's left of his scraped face on the gravel, Tendo screams about what imperceptible alien madness is happening in his blind field of view. Straining his useless pupils to the max to keep up, the visual spectacle of the slicing from afar flashes and shakes the entire blasted floor below. Catching a glimpse of the creature stuck in the air mid-supersonic pounce, the kid's mind short-circuits at the magic pause happening freely. Trembling like a dry, scraped branch, he's startled and understands the absurd mechanic, realizing the monster is suspended like a stuffed ornament on the heckin' stone air conditioner. Repeating the visual magic in slow motion, the hero pummels the armored bones while the boss just takes a beating, frozen from top to bottom by the platinum-haired hero's will. Launched violently by the laser sword hitting as hard as a nail, the target tumbles, leaving an arc of blue light, revealing the humiliation of the one-sided ping-pong match going on. Trying to connect one thing to another using his stressed-out neurons, our MC dismisses the sudden golden sacred circle as the direct trigger for the miraculous power to freeze creatures in midair. Watching the overcoated master corner and destroy from below with a fine shower of real invisible damage to amateurs, the unlucky guy feels a chill and a bizarre awe in his sliced chest. Focusing from afar on the eye patch falling to the side in a dirty exchange and the lit mandala-like retina, the chump's realization finally clicks about the real game mechanic Ryuji has in his skull. Sweeping the frozen enemy again with a furious oblique strike in the mystical smoke, the beast just tanks it, inert, waiting for physics to reconnect its vital wires to explode out its, well you know. Sweating like a pig on the asphalt and widening his dust-in terror-filled eyes as much as possible, Tendo mentally points with relief at the family's overpowered cheat tool embedded in the face of that platinum-haired, too-cool-for-school golden boy. Using and abusing the opening created by the sadistically precise timing of the beatdown, the hero's stance swallows space and time, closing the distance to the burning black core of the filthy soul of the motherless, nasty alien creature. Being absolutely certain that the platinum-haired boy's glowing left pupil holds the central control key to the entire absurd and cowardly fight, tipped in favor of a crummy humanity thrown into the dark devil's pit without warning. Flying past, low and humiliatingly for the 10th time, swept against the hole-ridden wall in a graphic and pornographic display of a blind beating in real, brutal, mortal combat, meant to kill with light and cold metal, drowned in ignorance and insane, chronic fear. Focused on the fight, our boy's eyes widen as he follows his brother's sacrifice. On the holographic screen, the prodigy's life melts away non-stop with each passing second. With the display locked at 150 years, the vital clock shows the absurd price of the magic. Constantly dropping with each new use, the balance plummets, revealing the grim severity of the eye trick. Shocked by the scene, our MC realizes that eye sucks the master's very life force. Completely terrified, the kid tries to lean on the rubble to get up. On the battlefield, the hero blocks a brutal barrage of dark whips. Just then, a crucial detail catches the warrior's attention amidst the blinding dust. Straight into the creature's chest, the blue blade hits the large central ruby dead-on. Skidding backward on the asphalt, the platinum-haired hero confirms that the core has finally cracked. However, the harsh reality hits hard. He's missing an arm for the decisive final blow. Roaring furiously, the aberration concentrates pure dark energy to counterattack. In a violent horizontal lash, the beast sweeps the floor, leaving a trail of chaos. Blocking at his body's limit, the officer feels the steel of his sword crack in the middle. Desperate upon seeing the imminent danger, the older brother screams his younger brother's name. Faced with the invincible hero being crushed, Tendo breaks into a cold sweat at the tightness of the situation. With his fingers digging into the handle of his dirty sword, his instinct screams for him to help now. But cowardice strikes hard, and his mind questions how a useless person could possibly save the prodigy. In shock from head to toe, our MC faces his own useless impotence head-on. Quickly glancing away into the hurricane, the prodigy calls the attention of the trembling trash. Blunt and to the point, the officer asks how much longer his fearful brother is just going to stand there. Ordering him angrily, the younger brother tells the nuisance to run so he doesn't get in the way of the fight. With no strength to fight, Tendo accepts his miserable fate as a weak genetic failure. Admiring the perfect strikes, he admits that the platinum-haired hero's talent is untouchable. Defeated on the inside, the young man understands that running is the only role for someone so useless. Turning his back on the mortal danger, our boy runs for his life toward the exit. In a desperate run, panic dictates the rhythm of his heavy steps on the blood-soaked stone. In a small slip, the guy glances over his shoulder to check out the bloody scene up close. Fallen and out cold on the floor, the captain is bleeding with only 39 years left on her screen. Groaning softly and with trembling hands, the brave soldier tries to fight against the mortal darkness. Suddenly, the kid's heart races as he notices the fallen captain is still breathing faintly. Quick on the uptake, the coward's eyes widen as he understands his brother's suicidal tactic. Fighting like a violent tank, the platinum-haired hero was holding the beast back to protect everyone there. Focused only on slaughter, the giant black beast raises its claw, threatening to slice the officer. Covered in blood and feeling the weight of the attack, Ryuji yells for our MC to not stop running. Angry at his own powerlessness, the useless one convinces himself there's no salvation in this dead end. Resuming his cowardly escape, stumbling, he takes off, ignoring his aching legs. Seeing the failure's silhouette disappear into the dark, the genius blinks, fully focused on the enemy kill. Sliding on the slick, bloodied asphalt, the warrior narrowly escapes a fatal thrust. In that tiny, invisible opening, the boss brings down its dark hammer, aiming for the officer's smooth skull. Clashing head-on with fury, the blue blade crosses the air, smashing against the immense alien's black steel. In the absurd shock of the slashes, the red core blinks unstably, almost giving way under the brutal pressure. Gunning for the weak spot up close, the prodigy's gaze shines with the certainty of victory. Resorting to total chaos, the big monster opens its arms, exploding dark spikes throughout the corridor. Raining down needles of pure energy that tear through walls, the scene becomes an inferno of blind destruction. Surrounded by the rain of venomous blades, the hero spins his sword, breaking projectiles on pure reflex. Suddenly, the platinum-haired hero freezes, his eye on something terrifying stealthily falling behind him. Pulling up a memory from a free and sunny childhood, the boys stare at a wild beehive. Trembling and fear dominate little Ryuji, holding a thin stick with no courage to hit anything. In a cruel, mocking tone, the neighborhood kids bug him, demanding the little coward hero to do something. Filled with extreme terror, the genius boy cries, becoming a living joke to the local mean kids. Out of nowhere, his older brother appears, smashing the bullies' faces with a surprise wooden blow. Standing tall like a strong shield, our MC faces the jerk squad with his chest puffed out, showing no mercy. With a wide grin on his dirty face, the young Tendo displays an unshakable courage in the face of danger. Attracted by a bizarre sweet smell lingering in the air, the bullies notice something dripping on the asphalt. Revealing his dirty trick at the perfect moment, the hero boy announces that the dripping stuff is pure honey. With eyes wide with pure unseen fear, the bully kids understand their big screw-up. Thanks to the brilliant whack on the hive, a furious swarm descends, stinging everyone without a shred of pity. Amidst the desperate screams for blind help, the cowardly little group runs for their lives. Fleeing the forest in tears of pain, the bullies disappear in a cloud of dust, leaving the duo in peace. Victorious and full of silly pride, the little boy watches the pathetic escape of his enemies in the woods. Still with teary eyes, the younger brother looks at his great savior with pure admiration and deep respect. Pounding his chest confidently, Tendo swears to protect his fragile little brother no matter what life throws at them. Exuding the aura of a giant champion, the clean smile from that day was deeply engraved in the prodigy's memory. Remembering that warm glow, the strong warrior admits he just wanted to be like his useless older brother. Back to the harsh reality of the filthy lethal combat, the red iris ignites, burning his own future. Pushed to the mortal limit, the giant black blow splits into dozens of venomous whips, covering the air. In a swift, neon-lit charge, the platinum-haired hero cuts through the heavy shadows with surgical mastery. Groaning from the colossal effort required by the spell, the officer's muscles lock up from the overload. Surrounding every millimeter of the hall's space, the flying claws block any chance of a safe dodge. Defending on pure, insane suicidal reflex, sparks explode, violating the very laws of gravity. Accepting the grim risk for good, he decides to force the time magic to avoid becoming space dust. During the automatic magical healing of his right arm, the vital price plummets by valuable years on the holographic screen. Calculating the disaster, suffering a fatal blow now would suck up a century of life just in the attempt to not perish. Aware that the enemy core would yield with just one more impact, he just needs to find the invisible opening to win. While dodging the lethal tentacles, the hero notices the enemy has overextended its attacks. In the blink of an eye, the platinum-haired warrior advances, slicing through the shadows with surgical precision. With a violent slash, the blue blade clears the path, gutting the rival's defense. Back on solid ground, he gains vital space to take a deep breath in the intense fight. Gunning for the monster from below, the prodigy prepares the final play of the battle. The ocular magic then locks on, freezing the 6 deadly whips loose in the air. Without losing a single millisecond, the officer's mind calculates the perfect opening. Focusing on the last obstacle, the boy destroys the shadowy arm using pure brute force. With a swift, explosive leap, the savior shoots straight for the vulnerable core. Like a punitive lightning bolt falling from the ceiling, the certainty of victory fuels the precise strike. Aiming firmly at the red glow, the mental command focuses on obliterating the threat for good. Blinded by fury and duty, the warrior's ruby eye transmits a surreal determination. Out of nowhere, vivid red stains the heroic memories of the invincible officer. In the bloody memory of the slaughter, little Rigi cried, surrounded by the corpses of his friends. Consumed by an acidic guilt, the boy couldn't forgive his own weakness in the face of their ends. In the midst of the old chaos, the child accepted that he needed to change his cruel destiny. Weak and vulnerable, the orphan only survived because adults stepped in front of the monsters. Determined to never be a burden again, the younger brother enrolled in the elite military academy. Forged by sweat and pain, the insane training sculpted the strength of the relentless prodigy. After grinding rocks with his bare fists, the boy's physical evolution scared everyone. Isolated from the normal world, his great goal was to be a wall that needs no one. Vowing to always protect the weaker ones, the hero swore to never again stand by and watch. Returning to the lethal combat of the labyrinth, that old promise burned strong in his chest. During the suicidal aerial dive, the trajectory of the blue sword seems absolutely fatal. Like a hot knife through butter, the ferocious charge humiliates the armored black carcass. Blood gushes freely from the magical light as the collision decides the end of the line. With a violent stomp on the enemy's carcass, the extra momentum massacres the target. Full of unshakable conviction, the genius smiles, tasting the hunt's end. Ready to end the bizarre show, the hum of the steel claims the life of the nasty beast. Guided by the desire to save everyone, the kid's spiritual pressure crushes the air. With the interface beeping like crazy, the warrior's arm finishes its instant repair. Regaining muscle control on the spot, his fingers tighten their grip on the lethal electric handle. Clenching his jaw in pure hatred, the blade descends thirsty toward the beast's heart. In a deafening, guttural roar, the promise of carnage rips from the hero's throat. Channeling 100% of his power into his arm, the thrust shines, blinding the entire room. But the party ends quickly, as a sudden gush of blood brutally reverses the game. Sprouting from the floor like an infernal spear, a subterranean tentacle impales the younger brother. Eyes widening in pure cold shock, the prodigy notices the trap he didn't foresee. Too late for any magical evasion, the dark tip has pierced the right side of his chest. Suspended in the air, coughing thickly, the golden boy of Japan stains his white clothes crimson. Heavy spatters of life fly from his limp chin as his vision suffers a major blackout. Hoisted like a barbecue by the disgusting black steak, the officer's body goes into fatal failure. Discarding the skewered meat into a corner, the monster throws its victim into a pile of rubble. Sprawled in a giant crimson puddle, Ryuji uselessly tries to catch his breath with his torn lungs. His face twitching from the sharp agony, the stubborn hero refuses to close his eye without a fight. Noticing the sliced opponent's paralysis, the beast with shoulder pads raises its sadistic guard. Lying awkwardly on the gravel, the prodigy can barely keep his heavy eyelid open. Blinded by the bizarre, continuous hemorrhage, all of the younger brother's vital senses begin to collapse. At the system's maximum red alert, the display decrees the local user's multiple organ failure. Grabbing the floor stones with blind rage, desperation sucks the rest of the hero's energy. Whispering orders to his own useless brain, he tries to draw courage from the bottom of the abyss. On the other side of the destroyed room, the threat accumulates heat and energy for the finishing blow. Preparing the execution of concentrated light, the alien seals the fate of the bloody combat. Fading out in the gray smoke, the platinum-haired hero feels defeat crush his abundant pride. With his face lying in the damp earth, the frustration of failure torments the strong soldier's mind. Thanks to the memory of his failure brother's smile, a strange warmth pushes away the internal darkness. His greatest desire was always to reflect that warm glow that protected him from the gang's beating. Thrown humiliatingly in the mud now, the living legend fights to keep his heart beating steady. Furious with the stubborn, living fly, the beast lets out a roar channeling destruction at its target. Suddenly surprised, a suicidal blur plummeting from the ceiling forces the hero to open his eye. Straight from the top of the rocks, an amateur silhouette dives armed against the invincible boss. Screaming like a psychopath in the dark, the unlucky kid plummets armed and ready for the worst. Mixing a gentle past and a terrible present, the heroic memory of his brother stuns the platinum-haired hero. With hatred and terror streaming down his face, Tendo expels any remnant of chronic cowardice. Shocked to see his family member ruin everything and jump into the fire, tears streak the soldier's face. Letting out a thick out-of-tune roar, the useless one ignores his 0% chance of hitting the beast. Completely unresponsive on the ground, Ryuji watches the most fragile human shield jump to his end. Like a blind meteor tearing through the cold wind, adrenaline locks the injured guy's path. Running now would destroy what's left of his fragile sanity, forcing the kid to finally man up. Gripping the hard handle of the worn-out sword, he bets everything on the thing's frontal blind spot. Determined to stop being a recyclable joke in the labyrinth, blind rage fuels his rapid descent. Bothered by the new fly buzzing above, the armored titan points its deadly antenna to the sky. Illuminating its chest core with pure lethality, the cannon changes its aim without any tactical effort. In a brutal, super-condensed purple blast, the aberration vomits demise into the diver's face. Instantly swallowed by the infernal glare, the boy's pupils widen as he accepts the impact. Split in half by a blind explosion, the deadly beam tears through the air, seeking the diver. Reflecting a lethal purplish color, the blast crosses the room, crushing gravity itself. Dangling loosely in the void of free fall, the boy's intuition screams that there's no escape. Accepting that the end of the line has knocked on his door, his eyelashes tremble before the hot impact. Bathing his chest in the infernal purple ray, his flesh turns to smoke, instantly charring. Eyes widening, bathed in funeral light, Tendo's stained vision blinks heavily. Shattering completely with a melancholic tinkle, his useless sword flies apart in fragments. Thrown brutally to the side, the dull thud sends the victim into the rubble. Swallowing thick dust after tumbling on the stone, the poor guy tries to catch his breath, groaning loudly. His bandaged hands shaking from the shock, he blinks, realizing he hasn't turned to pure ash. Waking up to blind despair, a new round of fatal glow ignites down below. Aiming upwards again, the monstrous beast recharges a second lethal shot. In that exact terrifying fraction of a second, the torn, platinum-colored coat flies across the ceiling. Plowing through the violent aim, the hero intercepts the purple light, taking massive damage to his stomach. Seeing the only human shield get torn in half, the useless one screams his genius brother's name. Screaming at the top of his lungs in a salvation-less corridor, the sprawled-out trash cries his eyes out. Grinning crookedly after the brutal deed, the creature retracts its claws, ready for the real kill. Crawling and crying over blind rubble, the kid shakes the soldier, trying to get some reaction. With his hand full of viscous hero's blood, a freezing emptiness paralyses our MC's back. Staining the fancy overcoat a dead crimson, an ugly gaping hole sucks the hero's remaining life. Holding the torn clothes, trembling with panic, his failing voice calls for a sign from the platinum-haired hero. Stubbornly calling the prodigy's name with a tight chest, the system panel begins to beep. Immediately, the interface melts the digits of his balance at a bizarrely fast and cruel pace. Coughing up thick blood that spreads on the dirty floor, Ryuji's fading voice whispers hoarsely. Vehemently rejecting that funereal farewell, the brother tries to cover the wounded officer's mouth. Surprised by the lying soldier's stupid stubbornness, their red eyes lock in a fixed gaze. Nostalgic in his last painful breath, the genius remembers the strong brother who protected the kids. Wishing to bring back the brave champion of old, his bloody smile reflects a refusal to lose. Stunned by the veiled confession of affection at such a crappy moment, our MC barely breathes, feeling the weight. Bowed on his knees, sinking his own face into the mud, the boy sheds uncontrollable tears right there. Demanding the posture of a legend until the ridiculous final moment, Ryuji orders the kid not to look down. Crying out the sins stuck in his closed throat, his weak heart now beats erratically and insecurely. Commanding him to always follow the path full of demise, the strained voice demands determination until everything is zeroed out. Lowering his guard, swallowing each heavy sob, the weight of the bitter truth takes root in his weak soul. Openly declaring his resentment for the complacent past of the trash beside him, the ruby eyes burn furiously. Criticizing the weak posture full of hollow smiles in the midst of cruel bad luck, he spits blood, cursing fiercely. Demanding action in a dry, fatal outburst, the guilt of being just dead weight for the family hangs in the balance. With his face turned away, ignoring any final pity from the filthy, fallen victim, the hero doesn't hide his resentment. Scared and crying thick tears at the pent-up revolt, exploding too late from his awesome little brother. Reflecting the shock amidst the plentiful tears, the confusion erases his sad features, giving way to despair. Suddenly, his own healthy eye throbs like burning embers shoved deep into his scraped retina. The display automatically beeps, firing off neon technological letters marking the vital download of the deadly Regulus. Blinking wildly, trying to calm the brutal brain-frying happening there, Tendo notices the ugly name scrolling up the screen. Declaring the heavy inheritance with his last breath from his punctured lungs, the platinum-haired hero hands over the key to the dirty safe. A buzzing electric sound deep in the blind cave of useless pain sends shivers and chills hearts. Terrified by the pain of having someone else's retina, embedded with evil magic, ripped out, his scream tears through the silent environment. Flying at 17% on a cursed loading bar with no visible end on the sweaty, red-stained lens. Collapsing on top of the limp corpse, trying to brush away the dust, Tendo pleads for the genius not to seal a suicidal pact. Inert like cold, stained meat propped against the hard, thick, bloodied stone, ignoring the foolish despair of his neighbor. Jumping to the halfway point of the infernal digital journey, quickly marking 52 in a silent, cold, robotic count. Crying and slobbering with snot dripping wetly onto his skin, cursed by the blue light that hurts everything too much. His full voice deactivating, surrendering his soul and the burden forcefully passed on to the fearful one's responsibility. Weakly pushing the slumped shoulders full of ugly fatal cuts, begging for any useless last-minute take-backs. Engraving the last trembling image in his useless head of an awesome, armored younger brother paying the price alone. Elevating the memories of the childhood champion in a forced, blind, macabre trance that dictates fatal defeat in his dry veins. Concluding the magical transaction of the blind, vital cheat in the false bottom of the foul dungeon of the giant black demon. Arming its sharp, gleaming bionic arm on the false ceiling, dropping dozens of brutal, piercing dark shards. The aerial slashes flashing, spinning blindly to tear apart the limp human carcass sprawled in the corner of the filthy, cold wall. Concentrating a poisonous purple in its closed palm at the back of the broken, ground-up courtyard, ready to pulverize a useless corpse. Whizzing in a furious leap, banging its stinking, crooked horn, letting out a monstrous thud on whoever was left spacing out near it. Thick, blind, loose stone falling in heaps on the isolated side, where the forced, cursed inheritance of blue light lies. Raising a face covered in fresh hatred embedded in the uselessly spilled blood, our MC cries, looking coldly at the fat killer. Displaying the demonic spinning rings now etched into his newly installed left retina, forcibly charging years from the poor guy's lifespan. Listing abilities that can stop the blind universe, trading precious months thrown in the trash in a cruel, cold, killer system. Pushing away the toxic cloud of dust in the background, the dull thud echoes, revealing her back curved over a crushed pile. Groaning weakly, trying not to drown in her own crooked drool, disgust etched on her face, digging her nails into her own beloved, beautiful shield. Gasping for air like a drowning person pulling in new life in the wet, cold, dirty ruins where she almost departed, falling limp and heavy. Stating she must be messed up in the head, having passed out in a brawl that vanished from her clean slate, not knowing how she wasn't ground to the bone. Lifting her stiff, sore neck, looking dumbfounded at the bizarre screen above, squeezing her brain trying to connect the dazed, lost pieces. Seeing with a jolt the giant funereal silhouette landing with spines on its back, shattering any clear sense she had there. Leaping blindly, clashing metal in the foul, death-filled air, bringing down the cursed hammer from above, ready to slice them both for no reason. The female pupil widening, a cold sweat chilling her thin bones as she watches the useless bomb exploding way too close now. Slipping from his pocket in a solitary, useless flying silver glint, the thing the broken genius let fall, spinning dizzily. Frozen like a rotten plaster statue, caught by surprise by the overpowered magical glare rising from below to intercept the loose strike. Stopped cold, trapped like an insect in a magic web with no possible escape, even freezing the annoying gravity that charges a high price. Under the command of the magic retina, temporal power rips through reality. Stuck in midair, the colossal monster freezes, completely defenseless. In his quick mind, our MC realizes that stop time doesn't mean victory. Wielding the broken blade, he understands its weakness against the armor plating. Furious with his own inaction, the boy yells that the resistance doesn't matter. Advancing against the motionless target, blind rage guides his suicidal attack in the air. In a battle cry, the kid bets his last chip on survival. With the weapon sucking his remaining energy, the metal glows, ready to gut the evil. Suddenly the interface flashes, deactivating the divine power of the magic eye. Stabbing with the rest of the sword in hatred, Tendo decrees the end of that disaster. Upon violent impact with the red core, the alien rock gives way easily. In a brutal explosion of energy, a purple flash swallows the beast in a blink. Screaming in sharp pain, the beast feels its own heart being torn apart. From the inside out, electric rays rip through the creature, covering the dirty floor. On the other side of the arena, the platinum-haired hero's body rests in a huge puddle. Turning to ash on the asphalt, the boss's carcass finally crumbles, lifeless. Across the dirty arena, an electric whirlwind marks the purification of the grim floor. Eyes widening in shock, the survivor feels the tension finally ease. Completely exhausted, gravity pulls his body to his knees on the floor. In a hoarse, ragged scream, the young man expels all the terror trapped in his chest. Blue sparks rise through the scenery immediately after, healing the ugly distortion. Dissolving into the empty air, the energy of the dead labyrinth begins to fade. With a clean, strong flash, the exit portal reopens, shining with hope. Lying weakly on the stone floor, relief overwhelms the pained young man. Groaning softly in the darkness, Tendo barely has the strength to keep his eyes open. Without warning, the magic of victory illuminates the true tragedy in the background. Mute and in complete shock, the reality of his survival hits with bitter pain. Trapped in a terrifying trance, despair once again reigns in his fragile mind. Driven by absurd terror, the kid gets up, stumbling in a pure rush. Crying out for his injured brother, he runs, tripping toward the fallen body. Through his choked voice and loose tears, the despair of losing his family hits. Standing before the nasty corpse, the weight of the sacrifice weighs heavily on his soul. With short, heavy steps, the boy's legs tremble near the officer. Breathing with great difficulty, the trauma of the loss suffocates his wounded chest. Left in a giant crimson puddle, the champion of Japan lies mangled on the ground. Sobbing and screaming the younger brother's name, the pain tears through the loser's throat. Kneeling and devastated, he cries, embracing his own mortal incompetence. Illuminated by a beam of magical light, Yui observes the heavy mourning from afar. With a sharp beep in her ocular lens, the screen confirms the remaining vital inheritance. In a sudden purple blur, the traumatic memory quickly fades from her mind. Between blood and flashes of demise, the nightmare haunts his sleeping mind. Focusing on his little brother's lifeless face, guilt tears apart the tense dream. Waking up with a startled jump, Tendo calls the platinum-haired hero's name, sweating coldly. With his hand outstretched to nothing, the young man gasps for breath in a clean room. Far away from the dungeon, the peaceful home scenery confuses his reason. Bathed in the morning sun from the window, the calm atmosphere contrasts with the terror. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he tries to process the madness of the night. With a lost, sweaty look, the doubt of whether it was all a cruel dream strikes hard. With the digital clock marking noon, his normal routine feels like an illusion. Under the hot shower, the steam tries to wash the tension from his stiff muscles. Leaning against the tiles with the water falling, his mental exhaustion is at its limit. With a jolt of panic, a familiar cybernetic beep sends a chill down his spine. Perfectly reflected in his eye, the balance of 35 years denies the dream. Drying his hair in agony, the young man refuses to accept that the inferno was real. Through the bright living room, the empty house only increases the anguish in his chest. With a towel around his neck, the trauma of the slaughter haunts his lonely steps. Unexpectedly, the memory of the living hero from that very morning resurfaces. Handing over the lunchbox with affection in the memory, the older brother was acting sweet. Not giving a hoot about the lunchbox, the younger brother would walk right past with icy coldness. Adjusting his focused tactical glove, Ryuji would mention he was late because of the mission. Turning his back to leave in the memory, the platinum-haired hero would disappear without a goodbye. Resigned to the usual cold shoulder, Tendo would just tell his younger brother to be careful. In a bizarre mental jolt, the reality of the tragedy comes crashing down on our MC's head. Staring into nothing in the empty room, the officer's absence crushes his heart. Aware that his brother is already gone, the real grief snatches his peace for good. Murmuring denials over and over, his refusal of the outcome makes the kid act crazy. In a swift run toward the front door, he seeks to deny his own delusion. After yanking the handle open, Captain Yui appears with a bored expression. Shocked to see the subordinate alive right there, he stammers in fear. With a serene and neutral look, the woman ignores the young man's despair. Without asking for any formal permission, the laid-back soldier invades his house. Completely dumbfounded against the wall, our MC watches the cute invasion. Already settled at the table eating the omelet, she demolishes the deceased's plate. Standing like a plaster statue, the boy watches the starving woman chew. Justifying the quick free meal, Yui says she doesn't waste food. Savoring the food calmly, the warrior shows no emotion. Just 8 hours earlier, the bloody escape from the labyrinth was ending. Collapsing on the dirty ground, our MC lost his strength right after getting out. The rescue team quickly surrounds the wounded survivor in the alley. Pointing in alarm, the medics notice the temporal magic etched in his eye. Interrupting the confusion, the officer invokes her military authority. Stammering in shock, Tendo accuses the captain of hurting the platinum-haired hero. Walking steadily, though bloodied, Yui protects her chief's brother. Barking dry orders, she forbids anyone from roughly touching the boy. Taking full responsibility, the soldier orders them to take the young man home. Hesitating nervously, the medics try to break the fatal news. Her stained face hardening, the woman silently swallows her own grief. Without mincing words, she decrees that the hero was left behind in the dungeon. Plunged into an absolute funereal silence, the shock crushes the team right there. Punching the asphalt, the kid breaks down, crying in heart-wrenching pain. Back in the calm present, the officer explains her home invasion. Cleaning the plate to the last drop, the warrior's hunger disappears. Complimenting the home cooking, she breaks the heavy ice in the room. Hurt, the young man confesses he cooked because his brother had no time. Wiping her mouth slowly, the woman senses the loneliness of that house. Right there on the shelf, the old photo holds their happy childhood. Sighing deeply, the captain prepares the ground for the serious conversation. Resuming her cold military posture, she introduces herself officially. Repeating the acronym in confusion, Tendo tries to understand the formal visit. Facing the boy directly, Yui demands his full attention on the matter. Defending the nation against the rifts, that agency is the pure elite. Flaunting blind pride, the soldier claims they are the sword of the people. Glancing away, the useless one doesn't buy the heroic talk. Cutting to the chase, he doubts she believes all that nonsense. With a sharp, cynical smile, the woman praises the young man's intuition. Being quite realistic, the captain reminds him that ideals don't save anyone. Cutting through the falsehood, she states that only one savior was genuine. Carrying the nation on his back, the platinum-haired hero was the pillar of everything. His magic pupil widening, the weight of grief hits his mind with full force. Completely lost in the plot, he questions his role in all this. Pointing firmly at his left retina, Yui focuses on the real prize. Shining brightly on the kid's face, the temporal power steals the show. Classified as king level, this relic could shake the country. Bought with the genius's blood, the cursed inheritance now belongs to the trash. Sweating coldly with the responsibility, our MC nervously swallows hard. Laughing uncontrollably like a madman, his fragile mind tries to deny the mess. Justifying his madness, he remembers that the big shot perished while using it. Clenching the wooden table, the hatred of being the survivor burns. Sparing her breath, the officer just watches the breakdown in silence. Without a shred of pity, the girl brings up the topic of the overpowered monster. Startled by the grim gossip, the kid's neck snaps around quickly. Yelling in blind protest, he swears his brother did erase the beast. Shattering his childish delusion, Yui reminds him of the basic rule of life. Focusing on the cold math, killing the boss would have healed his life balance. Stagnated at a short 35 years, the proof of failure is clear. His weak hand trembling, the realization that the sacrifice was in vain hurts too much. Punching the furniture in blind fury, rage silences the poor guy's reason. Cursing to high heaven, he blames the world for the dirty injustice. Seizing the emotional opening, Yui bluntly throws out the suicidal proposal. Completely perplexed by the twisted invitation, Tendo thinks it's a joke. Guaranteeing a collision course, she uses revenge as the perfect bait. Hooked by the bloody chance, hatred momentarily silences fear. Poking at his wounded pride, the chance to honor the platinum-haired hero is very appealing. Sinking back into his well of self-pity, the boy remembers he's just the family failure. Compared to the dead legend, he sees himself as nothing but pure trash. Trembling like a leaf in the wind, his chronic cowardice strikes his spine. Pulling up the scolding from the deathbed, his brother's yell pierces his eardrum. Demanding posture until the end, the order to never stop burns in his memory. Begging for action by force, the officer told him to spend his life fighting. Ignoring the useless past, regret doesn't bring anyone back. Against all blind cosmic injustice, giving up was never an option. Closing his blood-soaked eyes, the last word demanded victory. Clutching his aching chest, the kid accepts the weight of the twisted crown. Swallowing his own sobbing drool, the boy's gaze finally changes. Fixing his posture in the chair at home, the weakness drains from his body. Validating the hidden affection, the platinum-haired hero passed away loving his own family. Staring at the happy photo frame, the blood bond screams louder. Trading terror for blind determination, the newbie's aura ignites strongly. Vowing not to betray the final wish, he decides to embrace the military inferno. Facing the captain head-on now, the new warrior is born from grief. With blood in his eyes, our MC promises to achieve everything the genius would have if he were alive. To honor the legacy left by his younger brother, the kid vows to live a life worthy of heroic pride. Faced with this heavy promise, the captain just nods with a serious, unblinking gaze. Without wasting time, the warrior states that things must be done in the exact official order. With a quick and startling metallic click, heavy handcuffs clamp around our boy's wrists. With a smirk full of mockery, the officer declares the poor guy's arrest right there, without any pity. Totally in shock and with his hands bound, the unlucky guy thinks this is just a bad joke. Back on the road, a black car speeds directly toward the base in the big city. In the back seat of the vehicle, the prisoner travels, escorted by the captain and a driver in a suit. Quite upset with the humiliating situation, our little MC says he won't try to escape. In an attempt to ease the tightness, he begs them to take off the metal cuffs that are hurting his hands. With just a deadly glare in the rearview mirror, the soldier imposes absolute silence in the vehicle. Dry and to the point, the driver informs him that the discomfort is just standard procedure for the strict agency. Quite curious, the young man asks their destination and finds out they are heading straight for headquarters. Realizing his mistake too late, the naive guy grumbles, thinking he was played for a fool by the duo. Without letting her guard down, the officer reminds him that the recruit got into the car of his own free will. Annoyed by the irony, the kid retorts that he didn't even have the right to refuse the forced invitation. To cut the childish squabble short, the suited-up pilot says the prisoner is very much mistaken. By system law, any new user of a Regulus weapon must be immediately isolated for security reasons. Surprised by the gravity of the law, our boy's eyes widen as he understands the danger he's in. Immediately after, the warrior informs him that the situation isn't worse only because of an unseen detail. Very clearly, the driver reveals that the platinum-haired hero's blood prevented more aggressive treatment. Modestly, the captain cuts off the praise, saying she just chose the easier, peaceful path for everyone. Noticing his slip-up, the suited man adjusts his sweaty glasses and quickly apologizes to his boss. In complete silence, our little MC reflects on the massive weight of his family's surname. Out of the corner of her eye, the woman watches his reaction, maintaining her usual impeccable military posture. To stay focused, the young man decides to ignore the silly humiliation and concentrate on his own final goal. Suddenly, the vehicle's radio crackles wildly, announcing a monster invasion at Base 4. Through the electronic panel, the distress call transmits the desperation of the surprise attack in real time. Totally startled by the audible warning, the unlucky guy goes on high alert, jumping in the back seat. Straight from the dimensional rift, dozens of alien beasts emerge, furiously tearing through the military structure. Even with the operational defenses active, the atmosphere inside the vehicle becomes extremely tense and silent. Startled by the repeating alarm, our MC wants to know the real severity of that imminent attack. Ready for combat, the officer changes plans and tells the pilot to speed straight into the monster mess. Without a second's hesitation, the driver obeys the order, flooring the black vehicle's accelerator. With an absurd squeal of tires, the car makes a violent U-turn, changing its route on the spot. Thrown against the door by the sharp turn, the kid is ordered to hold on tight to his seatbelt. Agitated and very confused, our boy asks what it really means for that zone to be an abandoned place. Always cold and calculating, the captain explains that old labyrinths spit out creatures if not cleared quickly. Right away, the failure understands that without his brother, only inexperienced rookies were left to fight there. Outraged by the failed defense, he discovers that the lack of qualified personnel is a chronic problem for the country. Fully focused on the mission, the woman warns that a bloodbath will unfold if they arrive late. Behind gigantic concrete walls, the military base desperately tries to contain the nightmare. On the pure basis of blind brutality, the creatures break the dimensional barriers without any pity for the rock. Immediately, heavy energy blasts cross the courtyard, trying to keep the beasts from the fragile gate. Even taking heavy fire from all sides, the bizarre monsters continue to advance non-stop. Protected by thin barricades, the regular soldiers unload their clips on pure survival instinct. Screaming amidst the chaos, the commander urgently demands the presence of the armed elite to avoid a massacre. In the midst of the firefight, the human defense line begins to crumble before the overwhelming alien force. In a swift and merciless attack, one of the guards is sliced in half, spraying red all over the wall. With lethal claws dripping fresh liquid, the aberration focuses on the next defenseless target without a shred of pity. With a sharp break on the destroyed streets of the perimeter, the agency's car finally arrives at the tense location. Surrounded by smoke and huge debris, the entire base area reeks of pure destruction and agonizing fear. Faced with the war zone, the young man confirms with alarm that they've landed right in the deadly evacuation zone. In a dry cinematic skid, the driver parks, yelling that they've reached the hot drop-off point. Outside the vehicle with great authority, the captain already prepares her assassin's stance for the imminent clash. Up ahead, the thin black smoke reveals that the main containment wall has been completely breached. With tactical binoculars in hand, the officer quickly assesses the severity of the invasion on the broken horizon. Through the magic lenses, she sees the guards being brutally crushed by the lethal purple aberrations. Far from the safe perimeter, the beasts threaten to invade the city's civilian area if no one intervenes right now. After quickly stowing the tactical equipment, the elite soldier knows exactly what she needs to do on the field. The exact moment he tries to get out of the back seat, the kid gets a sharp warning from his tough escort. Trapped by the locked security cuffs, our MC can barely move properly inside the cramped vehicle. To reassure the young man, she informs him that the entire neighborhood has been devoid of civilian residents for over 10 years. Ignoring the local geography, he yells that the soldiers need reinforcements and forcefully offers to help. Shattering the boy's confidence, the captain tells him to stay quiet in the car, as he's just a useless civilian. Even under direct, dry orders, the stubborn boy wants to prove his new worth at all costs and tries to argue fiercely. Firm on federal regulations, the woman warns that using any magic weapon out there results in immediate maximum punishment and the end. Under a furious and frustrated gaze, our little MC refuses to sit there hidden while people perish for nothing. In a brutal reality check, she reminds him that his lack of training would result in an instant demise on the asphalt. Heading straight for the trunk, the agile warrior prepares her own heavy, lethal equipment to begin the hunt. As a grim reminder, the memory hits that using the ocular magic sucks 30 days of life in a timed instant. With a click of his tongue in pure anger, the unlucky guy just watches the woman turn her back and head for the carnage. Leaving the useless human cargo with the pilot, the officer runs toward the fatal danger without looking back. Caught by surprise in the cabin, the suited man panics when he notices the prisoner is escaping right under his nose. With an absurd leap, the warrior soars into the sky, leaving a trail of blue energy behind her. With a meteoric impact, the officer smashes the asphalt, creating a crater of pure destructive electricity. Totally shocked inside the car, our little MC wonders where that bizarre jumping power comes from. Right after the boom, the captain lands, sliding with her sword ready for the tactical massacre. Far away, a guard lets out a scream of pain, falling hard backward after a surprise attack. Desperate, the driver yells for the kid to stay in the vehicle, warning that amateurs are no match for the former captain. With clenched fists in the back seat, the anger of his own powerlessness crushes the boy's chest. With a frustrated click of his tongue, he mentally admits he'll never be as strong as his platinum-haired brother. To the sound of his racing heartbeat, the young man reflects that he knows his own weakness better than anyone there. Deep in his soul, the frantic pulse echoes, announcing a drastic change in attitude. But despite the giant fear and pounding heart, the chronic cowardice gives way to a different glow. Focused and lethal, the unlucky guy's gaze locks on the horizon, revealing that escape is no longer a valid option. Through the car window, the view of chaos shows the warrior fighting while the guards fall defenselessly. In a shatter of purple energy, a military shield breaks, leaving the human troops completely exposed. Thrown backward by the rough impact, one of the agents flies, spitting blood into the heavy air of the base. Faced with certain doom, the monstrous alien beast prepares to slice the fallen soldier. In an act of pure suicidal madness, our MC opens the door and jumps from the moving car. Meeting the hard asphalt, he rolls across the destroyed ground, mercilessly scraping his cuffed body. In the rearview mirror, the suited pilot screams in panic, asking what madness the prisoner is up to. Already planting his hands on the gravel, the boy ignores the physical pain and gets up, focused purely on the rescue. Straight into the mouth of heck, the young man advances, ignoring the yells warning that it's certain doom. With cold sweat running down his neck, the newbie doubts his own ability as he cuts through the dirty wind. Without retreating a millimeter, the kid swears he won't look away from danger anymore, no matter the cost. In an explosion of red magical aura, the Chronostasis command is activated, freezing reality completely.